the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Happy Purim, everyone. Welcome to another awesome episode of the CyberHub Podcast. Sorry I couldn't broadcast yesterday. I was traveling. It was a holiday. So much going on. Even today is still a holiday. So very excited about all of that. So a lot going on in the world of cybersecurity. We're going to get to all that and more on today's show. Before we do, though, make sure to go and check out KnowBe4 and thank them for their support of our program. Without their support, this show would not be possible. Thank you for everyone that's tuning in this morning. I wish I had an espresso. I do. I wish I don't. You know why? Because when you travel, you can't find a good espresso spot. It's problematic. We need to solve for this problem. It's a serious setback in incident response. But just because I can't have one doesn't mean you can't get your sip of coffee. So coffee cup cheers, everyone. Let's get right into what's going on in the world today, because a lot is happening, including a high-severity DoS vulnerability that's been patched in OpenSSL. So OpenSSL, a very open source project by and used widely, had a flaw that was tracked to CVE 2022-0778. It was reported to OpenSSL project by Google vulnerability researcher Travis Ormandy. The security hole affected OpenSSL versions 1.0.2, 1.1.1, and 3.0. It's been fixed with the release of versions 1.0.2 ZD for premium support customers, 1.1 N, and 3.0.2 version 1.1.0 is also impacted, but it's no longer supported and did not receive a patch. And that's the line I wanted to talk about here. So if you're using OpenSSL, it's one of those things you've got in your system. Forget everything else. They've patched it, so you got to go and do it. However, if you're in version 1.1.0, which is also impacted, it's no longer supported. So you've either got to transition out, which is significant because it's a big load to move, right? And that's one of the criteria when you're evaluating stuff like this into your environment is how's it being supported. And this one right here by OpenSSL, this vulnerability, not having the support for that version, and they don't say how many people use that version, is also very troublesome. Double check your version, make sure you're updating and patching. And if you're not and you can't use that version, start putting together a plan to execute that move. A large-scale DDoS attack on Israeli government sites, noted as the largest in history. The geopolitical climate around cybersecurity continues to intensify. Started with Russia and Ukraine. We're now starting to see that escalate. We're starting to see that escalate across Europe, and now with the Iranian nuclear deal, and Israel and Iran have been going in this shadow war for years. It's now starting to take direct impact, with the Israeli Nation Cyber Directorate confirming in a tweet on Monday that a denial of service attack against a telecommunication provider took down several government websites, as well as others that have been not affiliated with the government. The incident led to the Directorate to declare a state of emergencies, while some have said this was the largest ever. Now, I speak fluent Hebrew. My wife's Israeli. I have an Israeli citizenship as well. So let me just tell you, I was looking through some of the news websites and some of the cybersecurity channels I'm a part of. A lot of different conflicting information. However, this was significant. This took down the Interior, Health, Justice, Welfare, and even the Prime Minister's office's website were all taken down temporarily while they were brought back up. The large-scale attack against Israel is being attributed to Iran simply because Iranians were bragging about it on their state television shortly thereafter. They're like, you hit us with Stuxnet, we hit you with DDoS. Yep, that's quite the one there, folks. So the Israeli National Cyber Directorate, though, is very much involved, and all websites are back up after the DDoS attack. It's yet unclear if there was any data exfiltration or any subsequent cyber attacks after that. The FBI is also warning of an MFA flaw used by state hackers for lateral movement. This one's being attributed to the Russians. The FBI says Russian state-backed hackers gained access to an NGO cloud after enrolling their own devices in the organization's Duo MFA after the exploitation of the misconfigured default MFA protocol. Again, you've got MFA, you've got to properly deploy MFA, you've got to know who you're sending it out to, how are you deploying it, how are you authorizing those devices. That enrollment piece is critical. A Duo default configuration setting, which allows for the re-enrollment of a new device for dormant accounts, was what they took advantage of. So found the credentials, found a dormant account, 1 and 1 equals 2 in this case, and they were in, according to the FBI. The victim then unenrolled from DO due to a long period of inactivity, and then was not disabled in active directory. Again, security is complex, but sometimes the stuff we fall for is really, really basic. Managing your active directory, managing your identities, doing all these things are all really, really critical parts of what we're doing in security. We'll talk about senators now asking the Department of Homeland Security about efforts to protect the U.S. against Russian cyber attacks. And I think this is, again, the Russia sounding the alarm piece. I don't believe that Russia is in the interest of starting another front in the battle with the world at the moment, specifically with Ukraine, by starting to attack U.S. in a cyber warfare perspective. I don't think so, because in case you're missing the news, the Russians aren't exactly having a great time in the Ukraine. The Ukrainians have stood up and are fighting back significantly at that. So I think this is all just part of like a war-mongering piece. It's just, there's nothing to this. CISA has already issued a directive around this. MITRE's got all the TTPs and IOCs anyone could ever want when it's talking about Russians. But I honestly am less concerned. I'm less concerned with the Russians right now, more concerned with the Chinese and Iranians. I feel like they're trying to take the gap of Russia being busy with Ukraine to elevate their game. And we're probably going to see those threat actors move in on our environments really, really soon. We'll go into a CaddyWiper, another data wiping malware that's been targeting Ukrainian networks. So 2 weeks after details emerged about the second data wiper strain that's been in attacks against the Ukraine, another destructive malware has been detected amid Russia's continuing military invasion of the country. ESET has dubbed the third wiper CaddyWiper, which it first said was observed on March 14th. The metadata is associated with the executable Caddy, shows that the malware was compiled a little over 2 hours prior to deployment. CaddyWiper is notable for the fact that it doesn't share any similarities with the Hermetic Wiper or Isaac Wiper. Again, they're understanding that we're studying these forensics. You're updating the recognition. So the Russians are constantly going after that. Again, ideally what the Russians are trying to do in the Ukraine is really try to erase any recollection of the Ukraine, both militarily and from a cyber perspective, erasing databases, erasing systems, really hurting businesses would all be part of the Putin game plan of what they want to do in the Ukraine. This third strain, though, is bound to escalate and end up in our doorstep at some point over the next several years. So just keep your eyes and outs on this. Then that's why we report on it. It's because eventually it'll be at our doorstep. It'll be in our systems. It'll be knocking on our doors. Once it's used on the battlefield, it's out and it's for everyone to have. And we're bound to see a cybercrime organization try to take that. Finally, President Biden yesterday signed cyber incident reporting law into the bill. The bill does state that the law, CISA and has 2 years to implement this, although CISA has now indicated that they'll have a few months. They'll have a plan of how to report and all of that. So even though the bill says you've got 2 years to implement this, CISA has indicated that they'll be doing that in a much shorter time frame. So that's all there. So that's part of what's going on here, folks. Thank you, everyone, for watching today. We'll be back with a lot more tomorrow, hopefully with better lighting and a little better internet connection, because I know today's broadcast struggles. But if you're having a hard time watching, please go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. You can find the podcast there, as well as on our website at cyberhubpodcast.com and Sounder FM as well. So that's it for us here. I'll be back with a lot more tomorrow. Until then, have a great rest of your day. And most importantly, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast